Welcome to Hannity. We have a lot to cover tonight. Coming up, Senator Lindsey Graham reacts to the Georgia grand jury actually recommending that he be indicted. And later, would RFK Jr. run as a third-party candidate? We will ask him. He is not happy with the Democratic Party and the process running for president. Also, Senator John Kennedy raising eyebrows during a Senate hearing today when he read from LGBTQ books featuring explicit material. By the way, we'll show a lot more later, but as of now, viewer discretion is advised. Here's a preview.
I put some lube on and got him on his knees, and I began to slide into him from behind.
Oh, there's a lot more. We'll have a lot of that coming up. But first tonight, the walls, as we have been telling you, are closing in on President Joe Biden. Earlier today, the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, officially now called for a formal impeachment inquiry over the president's role in his family's shady business dealings. Take a look.
We know that bank records show that nearly $20 million in payments were directed to the Biden family members and associates through various shell companies. Even a trusted FBI informant has alleged a bribe to the Biden family. Biden used his official office to coordinate with Hunter Biden's business partners about Hunter's role in Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company. Despite these serious allegations, it appears that the president's family has been offered special treatment by Biden's own administration, treatment that not otherwise would have received if they were not related to the president. These are allegations of abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption, and they warrant further investigation by the House of Representatives. That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden.
The Speaker then sent a letter to fellow lawmakers after his remarks following up on the announcement, confirming that they will have a conference meeting on Thursday about this inquiry. Now, predictably, the White House immediately dismissed McCarthy's announcement, with spokesman Ian Sams from the White House counsel's office claiming Republicans have found no evidence that Biden did anything wrong, before calling the inquiry, quote, the extreme politics at its finest. Really? No evidence at all whatsoever? Okay, we'll get into that. What about the Treasury Department's nearly 150 suspicious activity reports, or that FBI's 1023 form that alleges, by the way, from a credible FBI source, credible defined by the FBI, who previously had paid this source hundreds of thousands of dollars, alleging that Joe Biden took official actions as vice president in exchange for a lot of money to enrich his entire family, all related to corruption allegations from the Bidens related to Burisma, that is the Ukrainian gas and oil giant. What about the 5,000 emails that Joe wrote under a pseudonym while vice president, including, by the way, we found a new account, AUKS, uncovered yesterday, despite the endless attempts by the Biden administration to block House Republicans. They have uncovered what is now amounting to a trove of evidence. Now, while they publicly dismissed the inquiry into Joe Biden, now, according to reports, the White House has been preparing for this moment. They knew it was coming, reportedly building out an entire war room inside and outside of government, filled with spokespeople and legal experts to counter the investigations into both Hunter and Joe Biden. They have their work cut out for them because evidence of Biden's wrongdoing is now quite overwhelming, and questions around the family's shady dealings, well, they need answers. Like, how did Hunter Biden, he was admitted to be an addict at the time, earn millions of dollars from foreign businesses and foreign countries with no relevant experience in the country or in the field of endeavor he's getting paid on? And according to the Johnson-Grassley report, he received, for example, $3.5 million from the former First Lady of Moscow, and then later $120 million investment in their real estate fund. They got the exact amount of money from a Kazakhstan oligarch, and that money was spent instantaneously on a brand new sports car by Hunter Biden. $100,000 for that international shopping spree with an associate of a CCP-backed Chinese energy firm. Millions of dollars for his work on the board of Burisma. He also demanded $10 million. Remember, I am sitting next to my father, from a Chinese business associate at a CCP-linked firm to, quote, further the interest of their joint venture. Now, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer says the Bidens overall have taken in tens of millions of dollars from foreign entities in Russia, Ukraine, China, Kazakhstan, Romania, and many other countries through these shell companies allegedly used to conceal the source and the funds and reduce suspicion over the total amount. So, if it really is just extreme politics at its worst, as their White House war room is now claiming, then explain what the Bidens did to earn all of this money, tens of millions of dollars. Why was Hunter Biden paid millions by Burisma and a, CCP-linked energy firm, CESP, in China, despite having no experience at all whatsoever in energy? Ukraine, China, no experience. How much money in total did Hunter and his businesses do with China, with Russia, Ukraine, and all of these countries? How much money did the Biden family profit in all of this? Did they pay taxes on all of this money? Did they follow the FARA laws, the ones they used against people like Paul Manafort? What did the other family members do to earn this money? Now, Congressman Comer is saying even grandchildren got paid. Okay, what did they do to earn their money? How much were they paid? Did they pay taxes? Why did they set up all these shell corporations? Why did Joe lie repeatedly that he never spoke to his son, his brother, or anybody for that matter about these foreign business deals? And we know just the opposite is true. We are now looking at what is potentially the biggest bribery and money laundering scandal in the history of this country. What role did Joe Biden, your president, play in all of this? Now, thanks to the laptop from hell, that's Hunter Biden's laptop, and eyewitness testimony, his involvement is clear. Still, he spent years lying to you, the American people. In case you've forgotten, let's remind you.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period. And what I will do is the same thing we did in our administration. There will be an absolute wall between personal and private and the government.
Do you stand by your statement that you did not discuss any of your son's overseas business dealings?
Yes, I stand by that statement.
All right, those were all lies from candidate Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, and according to congressional testimony from Hunter Biden's former business partner, Devon Archer, well, Hunter connected Joe with foreign associates more than 20 times to promote the Biden family brand. What's the brand? It certainly wasn't Hunter. It was Joe. And I know to talk about the weather, as one Democrat suggested, a little far-fetched. But it wasn't just over the phone. There's photographic evidence. We also know of Joe meeting with Hunter Biden's foreign business associates in person on numerous occasions, and further eyewitness testimony from Devon Archer confirming he attended a lavish dinner at the ever so prestigious Cafe Milano in 2014 when he was still vice president, attended by the former First Lady of Moscow, Elena Baturina, just days before she wired, well, one of Hunter's shell companies $3.5 million. And according to messages from the laptop from hell, Joe's involvement is even deeper. Hunter once complaining to his own sister about giving half his salary to Pops and paying his bills and requesting advice from Rosemont Seneca's money guy, a guy by the name of Eric Sherwin. Which account should we use for this various home repair of Pops and that various home repair of Pops? Looks like Pops might have benefited from all this. While another message reveals Hunter and his business partners set aside 10% of their earnings for, quote, the big guy, later identified as Joe, according to multiple sources, including Tony Bobulinski. Hunter even referenced sitting next to Joe while demanding payment from his Chinese business partners. I'm sitting next to my father. Remember that one? Within a week, there was all the money right in their account. What was it, $5–10 million? But perhaps the biggest slam dunk case against the Bidens involves Burisma, in large part because Joe himself bragged about his role in this case. In 2015, Joe was leading up the Obama administration's Ukraine policy. He leveraged $1 billion U.S. tax dollars to have the prosecutor investigating Burisma fired while Hunter sat on the board making millions, later bragging about it. As a result of the firing, son of a B, Hunter continued to get paid. The family continued to get enriched as a result of this brag by Joe Biden.
I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
He got fired. Hunter continued to get paid. James Comer's now demanding the State Department explain the sudden decisions leading to the firing of the prosecutor, which begs another question. Why did Joe lie about his involvement in Hunter's business dealings? Is he trying to hide something? And new today, House Republicans, they're coming forward to accuse Hunter's attorneys of intimidating IRS whistleblowers who did come forward with allegations of misconduct and special treatment for the Biden family. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.